Okay, so what is your name?
Oh,
Just introduce yourself.
Robert Berger, Bob for short.
Okay. My grandma's brother.
Yeah.
So on my mom's side. So we'll start. Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised in Madera, Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to describe your childhood a little bit, who you lived with, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, it was, well, at one time, when I was a year old, or when I was born about halfway between Laurel and Euclid Avenue on Miami in an upstairs apartment. When I was 1 year old, we moved to my grandmother's house. There was myself, my sister, my mom and dad, my Uncle Bernie, my Uncle Clarence, my Aunt Marie, and my cousin Mary, all living in the same house with my grandmother, because that's the way things were. We're talking back in 1938.
Okay.
Okay, so there was a lot of things going on economically and all, and families lived together like that. We all shared chores as I was growing up.
Okay. So you remember certain aspects of the war or different implications it had on, just daily life?
Yeah, I actually remember times, even that young, because it was such a thing that everyone talked about around you, that you turn the radio on, which is all we had, and you didn't have TV.
Right.
Okay, and you would turn the radio on, and you'd actually hear the president, Delano Roosevelt, talking about what was going on with the war. And there were times in that you would have a knock on the door every so often, and you remember those because it was just something you see a man come to the front door with a helmet on, okay?
Right.
It was an air raid warrant, and he would be telling you, please close the windows, douse all lights except one, go to the back room, this, that, and the other, and we will announce an all clear when it's done. That was in case there was an air raid, and it was during the Second World War. And so those things. The other thing that happened with that is I remember one time out in the backyard, I was getting close to 6 years old. And the reason I know that is because we moved the next year down into Madera. But the airplanes, big planes, would come in, probably the B-29s. And you'd see like confetti coming out of the planes. And they were dropping flyers telling you what was going on with the war.
Wow. So it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Did any of your family serve in the war?
Yes, my Uncle Bernie served in the war. My Uncle Clarence served in the Philippines, and on the other side of my family, my mother's uncle, Uncle Bill. That was my Uncle Bill. That was Myers on the other side.
Okay.
And he was actually, you've heard of it many times on television, this, that, and the other, the Battle of the Bulge toward the end of the war. Yeah. It was the stories were horrific when he came home and talked about that. So, yeah.
Okay. So describe like growing up or like your teenage years, what kind of things did you do for fun?
Well, throwing corn cobs on like on Halloween sometimes gets very destructive today. Then the most destructive thing would be taking hands full of dry corn and throwing them against storm door glass. It just sounds like the glass shatters, nothing happened. And then running down the street. Now, if you got caught doing that by the police, everybody in town knew everybody.
Right.
So they might grab you by the back of the collar, take you home and say, my dad's name was Wilbur. They might say, Wilbur, your boy's out there just causing us havoc. Please tell him this isn't, you don't do this. And then That's all he had to say, because your dad would take care of it from that point. So everybody knew everybody.
Right.
And it was all like, hey, how you doing?
Okay.
When you were a kid. Different world.
And that was in Madeira.
That was in Madeira.
Okay. So describe dating back then, or your first date, and I know you mentioned that's a little different.
I won't say her last name, because this is on TV, right?
Right.
But Lydia was the first young lady that I ever asked to go out. I knew her parents. They lived about 4 doors down the street. And you would get dressed up in a suit and tie, and she'd be in a dress, and walk several blocks down the street to the new theater that was in Madeira, and go see a movie and walk her home and say goodnight. If you wanted to take a date later, if you wanted to take a date and you wanted to go a little higher end, then you would have to catch you'd catch a bus. The bus would take you to Madisonville, Ohio. There you'd catch the trolley and go either all the way downtown or catch another bus halfway down and to the RKO Albi or the Palace Theater, or there were several with different ones. And you were in a suit and a tie, and your girl was in a dress on the bus. And there might be 10, 20 couples on the bus.
Right.
Doing the same thing, but you didn't know each other. People going downtown.
Okay. I think we'll take a short break right now. We have somebody coming in. We'll start up shortly.